Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to NRRL Saturday's F2 division. My name is Jack. I am your commentator. Joining me in the commentary booth tonight is Lewis, but not Lewis from yesterday, Lewis from normal. It's my brother Lewis. Good evening. How are you doing?
Hello. It is an interesting session tonight, as you say, F2 cars instead of F1. So a slightly different session, two races and one shot qualifying. A very, very different atmosphere than we're normally used to, but it should be very, very intriguing.
Exactly that. And as you see, one shot qualifying for the drivers then. This is literally their only chance for pole position. So it's going to be interesting to see. Spectating wise, it's going to be quite difficult because obviously we can't always hang on the leader. But currently leading is CJ3000 in Franco Colapinto's car, quite evidently. We've got 13 drivers here tonight who are battling it out in round one of season one. CJ is going to set a purple sector one and climb the hill, leading the charge so far. Ryan Brooks, we saw, won the pre-season race last night for Friday's 100% tier. So this is going to be interesting. F2 cars obviously very different to Formula 1 cars. Dan Lovett has retired from the session, as has Michaela, as has Meldrum, as has Sheldon. So maybe there's been a little bit of an issue here. Maybe people have readied up too early or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. We will check in the server because I don't imagine that all of those guys have just suddenly retired. And yes, we do have a lot more retirement. So it looks like we'll have another start to qualifying. But it looks like CJ might be the early pace setter, Lewis.
Absolutely. He seems to have been up there at the front for pretty much the whole session. And even though it's irrelevant now, he's going to come across the line. He sets a 125.9. So in these Formula 2 cars, a very good lap from him. He looks very confident in these slower and more difficult to control cars. He seems like he's absolutely flying out there.
Well, there we go then. Obviously, I doubt this is going to stand. I don't imagine that everyone just retired unless, they did set invalid laps or whatever. No, I have just had the confirmation that we are re-lobbying as the wrong settings were set. So we will be re-lobbying soon. Apologies to any viewers for the confusion. But we can obviously take that as a bit of a basis that CJ was obviously immediately on the pace, looking very confident, the only man into the 125s. So should be an immediately interesting session. Now, obviously, like we mentioned and like you've just seen, it is only a one-shot quali today. So that is going to pay massive dividends towards all of the drivers' sessions and whatnot. We will leave the lobby. ABS was apparently off, and that's why. So that could shake up the grid. CJ might just be one of the more experienced drivers without ABS. So that could definitely shake up the order. But we've got, like I say, a one-shot quali tonight. We then have a sprint race followed by a feature race. Obviously, in these F2 cars, you would imagine it will be around the same time as our normal F1 50% races. But personally, and I know for you as well, Lewis, we've never commentated F2 before. Obviously, there's no ERS in these F2 cars. It is just pure pace. So it is going to be quite interesting to see how everyone stacks up.
Absolutely. And like I said during the lap, they are a lot more difficult to control. And with two races, it puts sort of a mental barrier up there because the second you finish one race, you go straight into another. It is very much just go, go, go. There isn't that just relaxed period that you get in qualifying when there's 18 minutes. You're really only out on track for, say, 5, 6, 7 minutes of the session. Whereas with here, you never get that chance to slow down because there isn't going to be any pit stops. You can't be dependent on strategy. You just have to go for it.
Exactly. Now, I do believe in the feature race we should see a one stop. In the sprint
Ah,
race, I don't believe there is a pit stop. So I don't think they are that many laps different. I think there's. I don't know. Did you
I
catch it in the lobby?
believe, from what I saw, I believe it's lap 14 for the first race and 19 for the second.
Okay. So not too many
Because
laps difference.
we were talking about this before we went on stream, how it was going to be largely around the same time as a 50% race. Oh, 12 and well, I was gonna say it said 12 and 17 there, but then I realized that's for Australia and not for Hungary. So I believe we are 14 and 19 laps. Yeah,
Okay, so like I say, I'm personally IRL. I don't really watch much F2. I do believe that the sprint
either.
race is no pit stops at all, unless obviously damage or whatnot, and then the feature race is a one stop. Although I don't
Yeah,
take my word on that because I'm not 100% sure. I do believe that is the case though.
I think you're right. I can't say I watch any more Formula 2 than you do. I try to keep a close eye on it as a Formula 1 fan, but it is not something that I watch live.
Yeah, completely the same here. So it'll be interesting to see what does occur and what happens during this session. Obviously, like I mentioned, no ERS with the F2 cars, just the DRS available. So it is going to be interesting to see how people try and overtake. Is it going to be harder? Like you mentioned, Lewis, the cars are a lot harder to drive, especially when you are used to driving a Formula One car. They are very different. Obviously, a spec series F2, so there isn't any difference in the cars apart from what setups people apply. So it is going to be interesting to see who takes the right setup in the feature race, who takes the right strategy and whatnot. Obviously, the cars aren't different, so there isn't going to be any difference in handling or cornering or anything like that. So this is really a good test to see who is just the quicker driver.
Absolutely. And we talk about how a driver's going to overtake. The one thing that we didn't factor in there is at a track like Hungary, we had a 100% race here a couple of weeks ago. It's a very, very difficult circuit to overtake on. So if you're a driver that is driving one of these cars, not only is it difficult to drive, it's difficult to pass here anyways. So it can be a very frustrating race for the drivers and one that, as I say, could be quite mentally challenging on them given if you're stuck behind somebody for 3, 4, 5, 6 laps, you start to get frustrated. And unlike in the F1 cars, you don't have these extra tools of, as you say, ERS or back in the days, fuel. You can't do any of that. You have to just find another way around. And it is going to be very interesting to see the strategy these drivers take into that because it's almost that you're going to have to force the driver in front of you into a mistake and capitalize off that, or just find another way through.
Exactly, and that is the thing. Desperation can start to creep in when you've been behind someone for so long, you get frustrated, you might end up going for a silly move. There is the confirmation that it will be a 14 lap sprint race and a 19 lap feature race. Now, like I say, I do believe strategy will pay dividends in the feature, not the sprint race. I don't know if on the F1 games it is a reverse grid. I'm not sure.
Um, I can't say I would know either.
So it's going to be
I wouldn't
interesting.
know.
Like myself and Lewis mentioned, this is completely new ground for us. We have never commentated on an F2 race before, so this is going to be interesting to see how the track works and how the cars work, how the drivers fare. We know that all of these drivers do race in other tiers in NRRL, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. As we saw, it looked like there were a couple of early pace setters in that session. Maybe some people that were a bit slower. Obviously, we know the settings weren't as they were meant to be, so that will obviously make a difference. But yeah, we will see. But Lewis, if you look up and down the grid, obviously you are now somewhat of a veteran yourself in the NRRL community in the commentary with me. Looking up and down that grid, knowing from what you know from F1, who would you say you were expecting to set the pace?
Well, before we saw that brief qualifying session, obviously you would go to the likes of Sab, CRBT, Dan Lovett, but then you saw the lap that the pole sitter set, and it was a fantastic time. So there's definitely an eye going to be on him, but I would still expect those up at the front that are normally up there will have a point to prove, especially those that maybe struggled in the race at Hungary a couple of weeks ago. They'll be looking to put that right. But as we say, you can be up there in the Formula One cars, but F2 cars handle completely differently. So we could see somebody who has maybe had a more quiet start to their campaigns in the different tiers have a good and strong beginning tonight.
Exactly. Now, as you mentioned, obviously people like CRBT, currently the championship leader on the Sunday 100% division. That race will obviously be live tomorrow. And while we do have a little bit of a break here, I would like to plug all of the other tiers that are coming up for you. So tomorrow, obviously, we have the 100% tiers. Mondays, we're racing. We're racing on Wednesdays at some point, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. We've got about 4 or 5 days of action, soon to be 6, coming your way. So if you are interested in watching these races, NRRL is one of the fastest growing leagues in F1 league racing at the minute, and you do not want to miss any of the action. So drop a follow down below, turn on the notifications so you know when we've gone live, 7 to 8 p.m. Pretty much every day now, live on this Twitch channel. You do not want to miss the action. I will be here for nearly all of the races. Lewis will be here for around half of them. And that's all I need to say, really. We're one of the fastest growing leagues in the world. Great racing, absolutely always. You do not want to miss it. As we now ready up to go back into one-shot qualifying to determine the grid for the sprint race here at F2 Hungaroring.
I think it'll be a very intriguing session, as we had the slight look at some of the top dogs in qualifying. However, obviously with retirements, that maybe isn't the greatest read of how things will go. But those who were towards the top will be looking at that thinking they can recreate those laps. So they'll be looking to do that. And then you have those who retired that will be looking to put their stamp on the session. So I really can't call it.
It's going to be a very interesting session. Like we say, this is almost diving in at the deep end. We haven't got any clue what's going to happen. This is round 1 of season 1, so we've not got any past race results or qualifying results or champions to go off of. This is going straight into the dark, not only for the drivers, but for us as commentators, as we really do not know what is going to happen here tonight. But what we do know is that every driver is going to give it 110%, and this will be an incredible amount of racing.
Absolutely. And now, as we wait for everyone to get their setups in, Jack, if you're in the position that you have just asked me, who are you looking at towards the grid to set a good lap?
I think I'm definitely looking at your people like your Dan Lovitz, your CRBTs. I would also look at Meldrum, as he is the man that runs the F2 Championship and was the man with the idea to start an F2 Championship. So maybe he's a little bit quietly confident. He thinks that he can get up there as well. So it's going to be very interesting. As into turn 1, I'm on board with BT, and BT has actually spun at turn 1. So that will immediately relegate him all the way down the order. We've got Anarchy, who is currently on provisional pole. Sab now takes that away from him. Dan Lovett also in third, who's just been demoted actually by CJ, who took pole earlier. We've got McKellar in 5th, but all topsy-turvy as BT and Bruiser retired. So they are obviously not going to be setting any better laps, as now CJ does go to the top of the standings. Ryan Brooks, who we saw win last night in the F1 100% tier, is down in last place and 12th. So obviously he is struggling. And CJ, who really we haven't seen much of in NRRL, currently on for pole position.
Some sensational laps here brewing. As CJ, we said, could he hold on and continue his pace? And it seems like the drivers that retired in the first session not retiring here has given him no trouble whatsoever, as he keeps hold of that pole. Can he keep it though through that long final corner? Comes across, DRS wide open, and he has, and he goes better time than he got in the first session.
25.8 from CJ, the only man in the 1 minute 25s. Incredible stuff from the man in the MP Motorsports car. He will start on pole position. Sab Gaming in second behind him. And then McKellar in third, with Dan Lovett in fourth. And Anarchy making up your top 5. Incredible session. Obviously, one-shot quali can punish you if you make a mistake. Just exactly like BT, Bruiser and Paul Codd did. But there is your order then. 2/10 clear is CJ. Incredible lap.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. And if you're Sab, you'll be looking at this thinking, who is this newcomer taking the spot that I am normally holding? Fantastic stuff from him here. And I think this is going to make for a great race. Sab versus CJ. You can't forget those towards, your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and onwards. But it'll be very interesting to see the likes of Bruiser, CRBT, Paul Codd, who didn't set a lap or was disqualified. A track like this, we spoke a lot about in recent weeks how difficult it is to pass here. Where can they get themselves up to? Because they've got to have a focus not just on the first race, but the second race next.
Exactly that, Lewis. Now, it does look like it's going to be dry all throughout. I can see a couple of clouds, but doesn't look like there's any going to be any rain on the track. So all the drivers are safe from the weather so far. It's going to be interesting. Like I say, we're really diving in at the deep end here. F2, it's the first time the league's ever run it. It's the first time we've ever commentated it. This is going to be interesting. Now, I do believe that we will have a 5-minute break. Just to, set up the strategy and whatnot. As much as I do say I don't think there is strategy in the sprint race, although I might be mistaken, I'm not sure. Obviously, if there is contact and whatnot, we might see people dive into the pits to change a front wing, but I would imagine that is all we will be seeing. But Lewis, I will come to you. Obviously, CJ on pole. We've got Sab, who is experienced and was leading the championship on Sundays for quite a while. If you are Sab in second place, how are you looking to run this Grand Prix?
Well, I think you've got to look at what happens at the start because as, for our viewers watching with their notebook out of things that we'd quite possibly say, can't win the race at the start, but you can lose it.
And here is the start of the race then. 5 red lights ahead of the drivers. They were held for a while, but it is lights out. And away we go. And obviously, as we do see, it is a reverse grid. So it was Sheldon who was on pole with Meldrum in second. And down into turn 1 we go then. There is a kick liveried Sauber flying down the inside. And that is a raise. Incredible stuff at turn 1. And he's up to second. We've got Josh in third. Meldrum down to fourth. Psycho in 5th, Anarchy in 6th, as we've got a couple of cars jockeying for position in the mid-pack. Looks like they all got through smoothly. We've got a couple of cars falling off the train. That would be BT and Bruiser, but a good first lap. Incredible move at turn 1 from Erase.
Phenomenal stuff. They were 3 wide, as I say, and just to have the confidence to throw the car down the inside and risk it is paying off like hell for him. Phenomenal move. One of the moves that we've seen of all seasons so far in any tier. Fantastic stuff, and he's round!
Massive contact in the mid-pack, and again, there's even more contact, as you say, Lewis. We've got cars round. There was contact in the middle sector. We've got Paul Codd, who was round, as is Josh. So many cars jockeying for position, fighting away. Incredible stuff on the opening lap of this F2 Grand Prix, but it is Sheldon who started on pole position with that reverse grid. 3.8 seconds clear.
Just absolutely incredible stuff. He has managed to get into the lead due to obviously that reverse grid and just keep the position. Phenomenal IQ from him there, as here comes a raise, is that on Meldrum down into turn 1. And he gets the move done. Although on the switchback, Meldrum tried it, gets caught up on the curb. And Erase is able to keep hold of that P2.
Incredible stuff from Erase. We saw that move at turn 1 on the opening lap, as there we see Psycho going off the track and losing a position to Sab and BT. And now Dan Lovett is right on the back of this. Maybe looking up the inside, thinks better of it. Incredible action up and down this field. F2 really is bringing the best out of these drivers, as now we've got Anarchy up the inside of Meldrum into the chicane. So that is the thing with these F2 cars as well, is because they're so different, you can overtake in so many different places, and it makes the chicane, where you would never see F1 cars going wheel to wheel, a very viable option.
Absolutely, a lot thinner cars, so they can be put in much more strenuous corners for overtakes. And that is another thing that drivers will approach this with, is knowing that they can put their car in a lot more challenging places, and it's something that is great for you to attack from, but it's also very difficult to defend from because it's easy to cause contact because of that, as we've just seen.
Arrays is moving absolutely rapidly up and down this field. Arrays is the big gainer. He's just set the fastest lap as into turn one we go. And Michela is looking for the move on Meldrum. He is on the inside and there is contact between the two drivers. Michela loses out and Sab now joins the fight as he's on the inside, backs out of it, thinks better of it. But good racing from the three of them. But like I say, Arrays is gaining massively on Sheldon. 3 seconds is the gap. And with about 10 laps left of this race, he is gaining wildly and looking to take it to the leader.
He absolutely can. Sheldon was pulling away nicely, having not been involved in any contact, and that gap is just dropping and dropping and dropping. Arrays well out of pressure from P3, as Sheldon actually picks up a penalty, and that is going to be huge. Arrays already within that 3 seconds, but from the way he's going, you would think that that isn't going to matter.
Exactly that, as we see BT and Dan Lovett, who are big championship rivals on Sundays, wheel to wheel through the middle sector. Now into the final sector, both braking around the same time, but Dan Lovett has got the move done, and that invites Psycho and CJ to join the fight. There is a little bit of contact between Psycho and CJ, but they all keep pointing in the right direction, and Ryan Brooks now looks up the inside of CJ. Good opportunist move from Ryan. He's up to 10th. But now the drag race towards turn one. Are there going to be any big gainers? Is anyone going to go for any moves? They all hold position for now. But it is good stuff. Down towards the lower end of the pack as CJ picks up a penalty. BT and Dan Lovett still going for it here. Psycho and Ryan Brooks getting involved as BT has a half spin mid-corner. That almost puts Ryan Brooks into the back of him. And Michela is now coming at Meldrum.
Was slowly gaining. I was keeping an eye on that whilst you were looking at that fight with Lovett and BT. He was gaining up the hill, but as is normal in Hungary, corners just come too thick and fast for you to make a move. And that must be extremely frustrating for Michela, who clearly has the pace, but isn't able to get through.
One thing I must mention as well is all cars are on the soft tyres, apart from BT and Psycho, who are on the hards. So interesting strategy call from BT and Psycho. Obviously BT with a penalty, that is not going to help him at all. But are their tyres going to gain life towards the end of the race? And will they be able to gain positions? There are still a few cars out there with damage. Arrays, interestingly enough, is not gaining much on Sheldon anymore.
Seems like Sheldon has realised that penalty could come and cost him, and he's decided to maybe put the gas back on. Maybe he backed out for a while, as we have a slight bit of contact there between Meldrum, Michela, and they are getting very close with each other. Sab all over the back of this, and this is one to keep an eye on up the hill. Anarchy a little bit further in front of this, as now for the second lap running, Michela looks for a move on Meldrum into turn 4, but can't find the way through.
Incredible stuff. Up and down the grid, the mid-pack really getting close as Dan Lovett now picks up a 3-second time penalty and is falling a bit off of this battle. Sab, Michela and Meldrum all fighting each other. Like you mentioned, Anarchy is only a few seconds up from this battle as now CJ picks up a penalty. So obviously the track limits. Hard to stay within the tarmac, using as much of the track as they can as Meldrum now picks up a penalty. Incredibly tough to drive these F2 cars. Like I mentioned, a few cars are out there with damage, but on lap 5 of 14, the leader Sheldon is gaining away.
Yeah, I think definitely, like we spoke about, he realised the threat he was under, maybe just started to put the pressure back on a little bit more, and now he's out of that penalty zone, but not by much, so definitely one to keep an eye on. Arrays, I'm sure, extremely frustrated with that, as he seemed like he was almost going to catch him regardless of the penalty, and now he has to think of a different way to try and win this race.
Exactly that. Michela is still stuck behind Meldrum. Obviously would take the position with the penalty that Meldrum has. They are also gaining on Anarchy as Ryan Brooks now picks up a 3-second time penalty for those track limit warnings. Incredibly hard for these drivers as we see Meldrum go off there once again. But through the long right-hander, they all hold positions. All of these cars so close to each other. But, like I say, the leader is gaining away and is doing just enough to try and win this Grand Prix. Got to remember, though, this is only the sprint. I believe that is half World Championship points. The feature race coming up next will be very interesting. But I am also very interested to see how the hard tyres of BT are working. And right now, he is right on the back of Dan Lovett.
You would expect towards the end of the race that those hard tyres will start to be the better tyre to be on. I must say, when I realised that they were on the hards, I thought it was a bit of an audacious choice. But as the session goes on, it could be an inspired choice there from one of the men who is normally at the top of the standings. He won't like the fact he's in P8, but that's up to him now to make something of it. As into turn 1, nobody can really make a move on each other. As CJ is out, that is big. Although he retired manually.
McKellar did manage to get past Meldrum and up into 4th place. That is huge for him, and he is now already right on the back of Anarchy. So that podium place for the Prema ran car of Anarchy, not safe in the podium places yet, as the kick liveried Van Amersfoort car looks to gain, and towards the chicane he is very close, just has to back out of it. There wasn't room for him, but McKellar definitely has the pace thus far and is really challenging the man in 3rd place.
And Anarchy will be dreading that main straight, knowing he's got a car all over the back of him here. But given how close he is, he might not have to wait until the main straight, as here they are, they're wheel to wheel into the final sector. And McKellar gets through, but Anarchy is going to try and come back at him into the hairpin. Can't quite do it. But he will have another chance down the main straight. But McKellar with some fantastic moves here. Some brilliant racing IQ as Anarchy actually hits the wall there. And I'm going to assume that's going to take his chance of getting into that 3rd place out. Meldrum on the back of this, a little bit too far back for a move. And into turn 1. Anarchy just about covers it off. Meldrum, a slight
We've got a spinner.
And
Sab
is
has
rammed.
spun. He went into the side of Meldrum, I believe that was, and Sab is round at turn 1, loses a massive handful of positions, as here we've got BT looking to go round the outside of Dan Lovett. Just not enough grip there for him, and he will have to wait behind for a bit longer. But now here he goes, up, climbing the hill. To the outside he goes, he's forced onto the grass, is BT, and there is a bit of contact. Dan Lovett loses 2 positions there, as Josh now round the outside of BT. Incredible opportunist move from Josh, and he's up to 6th.
There's plenty of ways to look at racing. People look at it harder. People look at it softer. It's down the inside. Can't quite make the move, but BT getting very racy here. And he's going to go for it again. A corner I've never seen a car overtake another one at. That is an audacious move, but he's made that pay off really well. Locks up. This is not over by any stretch of the imagination. As is that Lovett having a slight half spin, and Sab is back in this.
The 2 Invicta cars battling, and Dan Lovett is coming into the pits. He does have damage on that Invicta Motors car, and he thinks it's enough to box. So he is really going to have to put the pace down once he gets that fixed. As here comes Josh on BT once more. Dan Lovett retires from the session in the pits. But BT and Josh wheel to wheel on the exit of turn 1. Hard tyres for BT, soft tyres for Josh as we head into turn 2. BT with the inside line, Josh round the outside. Is there enough grip for him? BT gives him the racing room, but BT with the momentum up into 6th.
That is, in my opinion, how racing is done properly. You give each other that room, you give each other that respect. And this is getting very feisty, but is right on the line. Good, hard racing. And Sab will be looking at this, licking his lips, wondering, can he get himself involved in this? Is Josh gets through a slight mistake from BT, and that must just be gutting for BT, but he's not going to be thinking about that because he's going to be looking at how to get through him here.
A raise is right on the back of Sheldon for the lead here. He's just picked up a 3-second penalty. So this is 4-track position now. Sheldon, obviously struggling, may have made a mistake somewhere. A raise is right on the back of that, as is McKellar. So we've now got a 3-way fight for the win. And on the term of penalties, it is McKellar that's winning. Now to the outside he goes of a raise. The drag race to turn 1. It looks like a raise is going to win that one out. He does. But on the track... Oh, but Sheldon goes wide, and he nearly goes into a raise, and now a raise has the momentum. To turn 2 we go, and a raise does get the move done. Now over to you, McKellar, as he goes round the outside of Sheldon. It's a road in 1-2 for now, and it will stay a road in 1-2 for at least a little bit longer. But a raise now the lead car on track. McKellar with the upper hand though.
And you can see exactly what this means to all 3 drivers. They want this win badly. As here comes McKellar now. Is he going to have a go into the chicane? Thinks better of it. And that, it was just incredible. I mean, obviously, we hadn't been paying attention to the battle at the front, as we didn't think there really was that much of a battle. And then just suddenly, he was all over the back of him. Absolutely incredible stuff. I'd love to go back and see what happened to Sheldon, as he must have made a mistake or just dropped massively off the cliff, as he's now in second, but under huge pressure from McKellar, and luckily for a raise, somewhat slightly gotten himself out of trouble.
Oh, my controller has disconnected, so we can't see any of the action. So, Lewis, you're going to have to tell us what's going on down to the main straight. Apologies to the viewers for that one. We have got the controller now charging, and we are reconnected as we get to the main straight. McKellar is right on the back of Sheldon here. Is there going to be enough of a gap to go to the inside? He is looking at it. Just not enough room, and he isn't able to make the move. But the interesting thing is, he doesn't have to make the move because he doesn't have those penalties. But he does have the better grip. And towards turn 2 we go again. Just not enough of a gap doing, but Sheldon goes incredibly wide. And onto the runoff. McKellar now through into second. Splits the 2 road-ins. Sheldon with a massive, massive mistake. And now McKellar is left to charge after a raise.
And that'll be a head-in-hands moment from Sheldon there. Under some pressure, yes, but to win races and to win titles, you have to be able to avert that pressure. And for that one moment there, he cracked under it, and he will be absolutely gutted with that, as he looked so strong in these first 11 laps. And that could be a huge psychological blow in these final 3 and a bit laps we have left, because he will be thinking about how he's just almost thrown it away there.
Exactly that. But McKellar isn't gaining too much on a raise. Obviously, with the penalty that a raise has, McKellar would be taking the lead. BT is really starting to gain on the back of Meldrum, so the hard tyres are obviously better now as Psycho picks up a 3-second time penalty. He is the only other car on the hard compound tyres, but BT is gaining a lot on Meldrum in the dying stages of this race. McKellar right on the back of a raise, not close enough to make a move, but does get the double dose of DRS. And is there going to be an opportunity into turn 2? He's not close enough, won't be able to get a move done. Interesting stuff between the top 2 as we enter the final closing stages of this race.
Oh, it has actually gone onto the grass there. That will have slowed him down a little bit too far back for McKellar to make a move. But I wouldn't put my money against it. He has scythed through the field, up 6 positions from where he started in just 12 laps. That's a remarkable achievement. And I'm sure Arrays will just be hoping that these laps finish as quickly as possible. Because if you're in this position, knowing what you must know about McKellar and how he's performed today, you are going to be dreading the idea of him coming up the inside or round the outside.
Exactly that, but the leaders are now very close to each other, and this could be a move for the lead as Sab Gaming picks up a 3-second time penalty, as does Bruiser. But McKellar, with a hell of a lot more grip, obviously taking more care of those soft compound tyres, and he is very, very close to the back of the Rodin. Van Amersfoort against Rodin. Here we go to the inside, and before the corner even comes, McKellar takes the lead on the penultimate lap of the Hungarian Grand Prix. He will have the double dose of DRS to try and pull away, and as a race goes very wide, that is the move sealed, and McKellar leads here at the Hungaroring.
I think that was a slight move of desperation from Arrays there, trying to go back round the outside. It was never going to work. He should have just tried to back out and think of a new strategy. I understand that when you've lost the lead, all you can think about is getting it back, but that seems to have hurt him a lot more than it would have helped him. And he's already nearly dropped out of the DRS. Well, he has now, and he will now be panicking to get back in it. He doesn't have that luxury, as we've said, of stick on overtake and get yourself back into the 1 second range. And if you're McKellar, you must be thinking, just get through these corners nice and smooth and you'll be out. And surely, if he can, with 1 lap to go, that's the win already practically done.
BT got ahead of Meldrum at the chicane and is now chasing down Anarchy. He's just gone very wide there as we come towards the end of the second sector and into the third. He is very, very close and maybe looking for a move of the hairpin. He is throwing it down the inside. Incredibly opportunist move. He isn't able to get the grip and get through, but now will have the DRS on the Prema Ran car of Anarchy, and this should be a move easily done. He pulls to the inside and takes 4th position, but as we enter the final lap, McKellar leads the way.
Absolutely fantastic drive from him after starting in P8 to go through 7 cars in 14 laps. Just phenomenal stuff. Of course, you did the math on that. 1 position every 2 laps. Sensational stuff from him as he has sided his way through the field in just a phenomenal way and a deserved winner of the race.
Exactly that, as he comes to the chicane for a final time, almost lapping Bruiser here, as we can see Bruiser has been struggling quite a lot, but McKellar, like you mentioned, starting 8th, absolutely carving his way through the field as BT actually moves himself up to 3rd and onto the podium now. So incredible drive from BT, but for McKellar, he is going to open the F2 Championship in style. The sprint race we have watched here today, and he has sprinted his way to the checkered flag. The Kick Sauber liveried Van Amersfoort car is going to round the final corner and open the season in style. He will lead the championship. He will win the first race. The sprint race of Hungary goes to McKellar. It is Arrays who will finish in 2nd after a great charge from the mid-pack. BT will finish 3rd on track, but Josh will take it after penalties. Anarchy comes home in 4th with BT in 5th. Sab Gaming in 6th. Sheldon in 7th. Psycho will finish in 8th with Meldrum in 9th. Ryan Brooks in 10th. Paul Codd in 11th and Bruiser in 12th, with Dan Lovett and CJ failing to reach the flag.
Sensational drive from all of those in the top 3, although Josh, to be fair, started on pole and lost 2 positions, but to recover that from where he was down in P6, P7, fantastic stuff. But Sheldon will be at... Oh, and actually, who is that there? A puncture at turn 1. What happened there? P8, P9, I believe. Meldrum coming across the line with a puncture.
Incredibly interesting. I wonder how he actually got the car around. We saw he was quite a way behind and was struggling against the likes of CRBT. But if he did manage to get that across the line with a puncture, that is incredibly impressive stuff. Obviously, now we have the feature race coming up for you. But McKellar does lead home and wins the sprint race. 10 championship points to him.
Fantastic stuff from him. As I was saying before we caught wind of the puncture, Sheldon must be absolutely gutted with that. to start on pole position and then drop down to P7. I mean, he fought hard for the podium and it looked like he was guaranteed for it. And then that mistake at the chicane on the final corner, dropping him down. And he will not be pleased with that. But luckily for him, he does have the chance to redeem himself in the feature race.
Exactly that. There are your sprint race results then. McKellar wins from Erase, Josh, Anarchy, BT, Sab Gaming, Sheldon, Psycho, Meldrum, Ryan Brooks, Paul Codd, Bruiser, with Dan Lovett and CJ failing to reach the end. And there is your championship standings. McKellar will lead the championship after the sprint race, Erase in second, and Josh in third, as we now head to the feature race of Hungary.
And I'm sure those who were towards the bottom, they will be looking to redeem themselves, as I've just said, with Sheldon. Everyone with a bit of a point to prove. Those who were at the top looking to retain them and those positions. So it's going to make for, I think, an even more interesting race. And one thing we haven't pointed out, an extra 5 laps to do the racing.
Exactly. So that is going to pay dividends for the drivers. 5 extra laps of racing could warrant more penalties, will definitely warrant more overtakes. As we now, I do believe, have a little bit of a break between the sprint and the feature race. So time to catch up on what we have just witnessed. Some great racing up and down the field. Carnage at turn 1. Will we see more of the same? Lewis, if you are, say, in the slot of pole position, how are you planning to defend that into turn 1?
I think it's difficult to say before, you've had your lights out and see how your start occurs, but you're going to be looking to keep hold of it.
Exactly that. And 5 red lights ahead of the drivers. They weren't held for long this time. And CJ does get away well. And we've already got a car round almost before the start. And we have got a car round. That's Ryan Brooks. As into turn 1 we go then. Sab is going for it. And there is a bit of Hungarian bowling as someone has gone off the track. I believe that was Josh. And into the side of about 4 cars there. Massive damage for some people, but Sab Gaming has flown away with this. McKellar already up to second. CJ, our pole sitter, down to third. I believe that was Josh that went bowling and does have a lot of damage. We saw Ryan Brooks, who was round already at the start, but incredible start from Sab. McKellar also up there, who obviously won the sprint race. Dan Lovett in fourth, CJ in third, Anarchy in fifth with Sheldon in sixth. Insane stuff at turn 1.
It's disappointing to see a great overtake from Sab there to take the lead, but disappointing to see so many drivers get caught up. But what that does do is it throws the rest of the order up in smoke and should give us a determined field for the next 18 laps. But it just absolutely incredible stuff. We've seen it before in Hungary, and it's not too out of the realms of possibility you'd see it again, and we just have there.
Exactly. Sheldon going a little bit wide, and Anarchy has all the impotence he needs as BT, who is our big gainer, up 6 places from the start, is already looking incredibly racy. As we look now to the tyre situation, everyone is on hards apart from BT and Sheldon. So BT is really going to want to get on with this, and he is right on the back of Anarchy. To the outside he goes, braking very, very late. Is he able to keep it on track? Yes, he is. Anarchy gives him just enough room. That will now turn into the inside of turn 2 for BT in the Alpine liverying car. And he does make the move stick up into 6th for BT.
Fantastic racing IQ from both there, but a great move from BT to take P6, and he will be right on the back of Sheldon. Soft tyres versus soft tyres. And this, as we've seen with BT already, could get very, very tasty.
Incredible action so far, and we're only on lap 2 of 19 here. BT and Sheldon both running the softs. Should be absolutely flying against the hard runners. Josh has pitted and also gone onto the softs, but BT does look quicker and is right behind his compatriot on the soft tyres. BT with a purple middle sector. He is flying in 6th at the minute, looking to now take 5th as DRS will be enabled on this lap. And Sheldon does run wide at the penultimate corner, and that opens the door for BT to now look round the outside of the final corner. You don't see many moves there. He does have to stick in behind, but should now get the DRS and a bit of a drag. He gets the fastest lap of the race. Is he able to overtake into turn one? It doesn't look like it. Sheldon is actually going for a move on Dan Lovett. And an incredibly coordinated move there. But he has gone wide and there is contact. But Sheldon does make the move stick up into fourth. Dan Lovett is down as Beatty with a massive lockup. Nearly going into the back of Dan. Manages to hold it on track. Sheldon up to fourth. Dan Lovett down to fifth.
I thought when Sheldon went for that move that was going to end in catastrophe for him. It looked very much like a move out of desperation to keep BT behind, and he turned that into an incredible overtake to take P4. So fantastic stuff from him. Dan Lovett seemingly under pressure from BT here. I think BT and Sheldon both know that if they want to have any say in the outcome of the victory today, they need to get on with this because it's a lot easier to keep a car behind you than it is to overtake around here. And I think they realise that they need to get out in the lead as quick as possible before these tyres burn out, or they will not be able to take the full victory that they so desperately will want.
Exactly that, and Sheldon really is reeling in the top three, but CJ is right on the back of McKellar. McKellar will obviously have the DRS to try and negate some of the DRS advantage that CJ will get. McKellar is way too far back to even think about a move on the leader, Sab Gaming. Looks like it's all going to stay the same between the top three. But here goes BT on Dan Lovett. Exactly like Sheldon did to him a lap ago. Down the inside goes BT, and he is up into fifth. Dan Lovett is slipping down the grid, but obviously the soft tyres for Sheldon and BT, you would expect them to be quicker, and at this stage of the race, that is exactly what they are doing. BT moves himself up to fifth, past Dan.
And as we've been watching that, McKellar has been reeling in Sab 2 tenths quicker on this first lap. And it'd be fair to say he's dominated the weekend really with some cracking moves. And it looks like we aren't too far away from a Sab and McKellar showdown for the lead of this race currently. But CJ will be right on the back of this as soon as they start fighting, and potentially even before, because this looks very much like a DRS train is about to be formed. And if you have the pace to get through, you're going to need to take it now.
It looks like Sheldon and BT are having a massive battle as Sheldon goes wide and onto the grass, as does BT. These two are really going hell for leather against each other, and BT is going to be very close towards turn one. He will have the DRS to gain on Sheldon. The Rodin car a bit slower in the straight line. To the outside goes BT. To the inside goes Sheldon, and he does lock up though. Does BT. Sheldon, though, goes very wide. Dan Lovett is also getting involved in this. BT does eventually move up to fourth, and Dan Lovett now looking down the inside of Sheldon. He might lose 2 positions here, and he does as he runs off wide into the grass. BT is up to fourth. Dan Lovett is up to fifth. And while we were watching that, McKellar has taken the lead.
Fantastic stuff. I had it on in the background whilst you were watching Dan and BT. A great move from McKellar, and CJ all over the back of this now. Nearly had second place. There was near contact as well, and this is going to get very interesting. A 3-way fight, and they will slow each other down. And given the pace that BT has shown, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 3 or 4 laps he is right on the back of this as well.
Agreed. He is already gaining away from Dan Lovett at a massive rate of knots, and he is gaining towards this lead battle. But Sab will be looking to get that lead back. He is about 5 tenths behind as we go through the final corner. Is that enough to try and get the move done on McKellar? McKellar will move to the inside. You can only move once, and that is exactly what he's doing. But Sab is gaining, and to the outside he looks. He isn't close enough, but will get the double dose of DRS and will get the better exit. So it is all game on here between the top two, and looking to sweep in behind is CJ as Sab looks to the outside. Is there the grip out there? CJ takes the inside line, and now he is the one gaining on Sab. All positions stay the same, but incredible tussling for position between the top three.
And if you're McKellar, you've just got to hope that these two fight and you can just soldier on in the lead, as he will be loving watching this fight between second and third. But he's not really gaining as much as you'd expect for two drivers for be in the lead. Had a huge brain fog there. He's not really gaining that much when you're in the lead and the two drivers behind you are fighting, and that must be extremely frustrating for him.
Exactly that, Lewis. McKellar will be hoping that something happens behind, but we have got a yellow flag actually, and that is Ryan Brooks. We saw him spin at the start. He's had another spin and he has got damage on that car, so we might see him come into the pits at the end of this lap. But towards the main straight, the gap is a little smaller between Sab and McKellar. Can Sab go for a move?
He's got to try, but he's under pressure from CJ here. And CJ actually closer to Sab than Sab is to McKellar. Too far back to make a move, although Sab nearly goes into the back of McKellar there. That wouldn't be ideal for him. BT ever so slightly pulling that gap down, but still got 2.3 seconds to catch up, plus, of course, his penalty. So right now, everything going towards the way of McKellar, as these two in second and third getting closer to each other. And that is exactly what he will be wanting to see in his rearview mirrors.
Arrays and Psycho are having a great battle for 8th and 9th. I just caught that at the end of turn 1. Arrays is really starting to reel in Psycho, and he is looking to take 8th place. Sheldon, I believe his tyres are starting to go off a bit. BT maybe just keeping them a bit in better check as he is gaining on the leaders. But at the top, all has stayed the same for a few laps, but the gaps are coming down massively. And this is going to be incredibly interesting as we head on to lap 8.
Absolutely. And this, all three of the top three within a second of each other. This is going to be very interesting down the main straight, as we've made a big point of no ERS, still DRS though, and that almost becomes a little bit more powerful given that there isn't anything else to fight with. As Sab, close enough on this lap for a move. Is he going to go for it? He is. To the outside he does. McKellar cuts him off. Some great driving there. They do make contact and he's round. Although he's managed to keep it on track, but he's not going to like that, as here comes BT now to the inside, and this is surely going to be an easy move. And he does get through, and that just creates a bit of breathing room between McKellar and CJ, almost to the point of 1 whole second. But now, if you're CJ, you've just got to try and find your own way through. You've got to forget, although he picks up a penalty, so that is certainly not the way to go through. But McKellar, things starting to align for him, just like they did in the first race. And this is looking faultless from him.
CJ picked up damage in all of that. He has lost an end plate, and that is not going to be helping his charge towards victory. Sab somehow didn't get damage from that contact. He is still pointing somewhat in a straight line, managed to save the full spin, but did nearly go round. The big gainer from that, not only McKellar, but BT, who is very, very close to the back of CJ, and surely with CJ's damage will make a move this lap. CJ is coming into the pits though. BT will take that position. Sab will take over third, but McKellar, the stars are lining for him in Hungary, leading the way.
And that'll be a sight he will be very, very happy to see. And if you're on CJ's point of view there, it's heartbreaking to get damage when you're in second place, but now he will have a speed advantage on the rest of those. Soft tyres go on. You can't really be thinking about the damage you've just picked up. You're still in a fairly decent position at this point. You just got to roll with it and see if you can get any positions back. Meldrum goes through on him, but he will be chasing him down, I'm sure, the second he gets out. But now, if you're McKellar, Jack, what are you doing for the next 10 laps? Because surely you can't mess this up now.
I think the important thing is going to be the strategy. When will someone like BT on the soft tyres come in? Because we know the undercut, especially in F2 cars, can be your best chance to win or lose a race. So it is all going to be about when BT decides to box. When do those tyres start to give in? And when, if you are McKellar, do you throw the hard tyres away? Because presumably you're going to go onto the softs. Now we know that they can go a while, the soft tyres, but maybe at this point of the race they aren't the quickest. So it's going to be very interesting to see when these guys decide to pit, as we see Sab Gaming come into the pits.
One thing I do want to point out with McKellar here is that it's very easy to pick up penalties, as we've seen the rest of the drivers do. He has not picked up one in either of the races, so fantastic consistency from him here, and consistency that's really going to help him win the race.
Exactly that. Hungary is a very easy track to get penalties around, and McKellar is driving with incredible consistency. Up and down the field, we have got drivers with penalties. We saw Sab Gaming pick up a 10-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. We obviously know that the pit stops here are a lot longer than in a Formula 1 Grand Prix, as we will actually watch Ryan, who just comes into the pits now. We will watch his pit stop. There are only 4 members of the pit crew allowed to change tyres, one at a time. So it is a lot longer of a pit stop. As you can see here, they get the tyres on and off. And out goes Ryan Brooks then. But out in front, McKellar surely on course to lead this race, as we now see Dan Lovett is starting to gain on BT. Those soft tyres have seen their best laps.
I absolutely have, and here comes the bit of the strategy that BT wouldn't like. You knew that it was going to come, and he, I think, is going into the pits, but he is followed by Dan Lovett. So now this gets very interesting, as I think, unless there's a slow stop, BT has just enough of a gap to come out in front of him. But who here is going to have the better plan of what to do?
I think the quite interesting thing is that BT was on softs, Dan was on hards, and they have come in on the exact same lap, which is really quite interesting, as Psycho comes into the pits as well with a raise. Those two have been battling all race and are still going to be stuck to each other. McKellar, Anarchy, and Meldrum stay out. There are your current top 3, as CJ sets the fastest lap of the race, obviously pushing like crazy after that contact. Dan Lovett has come out just ahead of him. Obviously, Dan onto the soft tyres, BT onto the hard, Sab also on a set of softs. So this will be an incredibly interesting race to the end.
And is it? I'm not too sure. Do you have? Is it obliged you have to pit in this race?
Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking maybe McKellar would try and take these to the end. He has a 14-second lead over Anarchy. 27 seconds should be about enough to emerge in the lead, as he's coming into the pits in this lap. So here we go then.
Incredibly important stop for McKellar. Our race leader slows right down coming into the pits. That was very slow coming into the entry of the pit lane. Anarchy decides to stay out. Meldrum is now coming to the penultimate corner, and we will see whether he boxes or stays out. Paul Codd is the only man. Oh, no, he has pitted, sorry. Has Paul Codd, I believe. So we've still got all these drivers to come into the box. McKellar obviously goes on to a set of the soft compound tyres. Meldrum does stay out, and this is going to be very close, I believe. Or no, actually it isn't, as Meldrum and Sab are fighting though. Sab goes to the inside, and Meldrum with a massive lock up and riding on board with McKellar. He sees that unfold all in front of him, and this is going to frustrate McKellar, as he is now right behind Meldrum on the older tyres, and he will be getting slowed down this entire time.
And I think this will be part of McKellar's plan. Just try and hold him up, burn out those tyres. But I don't think it'll work, especially for too long, as we've got a yellow. And that is for BT, although he's kept it pointing in the right direction and going again. So that's cleared very quickly. As now we've got CJ closing up to Dan Lovett here as McKellar gets the move done. So big for him. As I believe, is it just now Anarchy we are waiting on to stop McKellar 3 seconds down the road from Sab. But obviously with that couple lap tyre difference, should be able to catch him. He's taking time out of him already. Obviously Sab with that penalty. So McKellar doesn't necessarily have to pass him. But I'm sure he will want to win this on track, as he is just flat out dominated this evening.
Anarchy comes into the pits then, as does Meldrum. So the final two come into the pits. So that is your official order then. Sab Gaming takes the lead of the race. McKellar is in second, but obviously with the penalties, like you mentioned, Lewis, he will fall behind McKellar. Dan Lovett is in third with CJ right on the back of him. Anarchy, Meldrum and BT into the pits, and BT obviously must have got damage somewhere because he's only been on those for 2 laps and he has got damage and is changing the front wing.
Incredible stuff. Something, you know, pit stops take a lot longer in Formula 2 cars, but that must feel like an age to be sat in the box when you're waiting for the wing to be repaired, especially in the position you were in. Things were looking good and now not so good for Meldrum. But now he's just got to keep on going and see what else there is left to recover from this race.
We've just seen CJ go off at the chicane and pick up another penalty as he is trying to fight his way by Dan Lovett. CJ did have a purple sector 1. He is absolutely flying in that MP Motorsport car, trying to get past Dan in the Invicta liveried car, but nothing doing for him at the minute. McKellar is really starting to reel in Sab. Dan is falling just a bit off the back of that battle, but CJ is right with him. Sheldon is the highest car and one of 2 cars to be on the hard compound tyres. He is in 5th. And we will quickly take a look at the penalties, and 13 seconds of penalties for Sab Gaming. So McKellar really doesn't have to do anything. Dan Lovett doesn't have any penalties, neither does McKellar. CJ and Sheldon are on 6 seconds of penalties, with Psycho on 3, Arrays is on 6, and then we've got BT, Ryan Brooks and Bruiser all on 3 seconds, Paul Codd on 9 seconds, and Josh also on 6.
And if you're Dan Lovett here, you'll be looking at closing that gap to try and take P2. It seems very unlikely that you'll be getting the win at this stage, but with the penalty differences, he is safe to CJ, of course. Obviously 5 laps to go, so that can all change. But he will be looking to, as I didn't realise actually, the amount of penalties Sab has got, 13 seconds. So that is going to put him quite the way down the field, to the point where he might not even get on the podium.
Exactly, I mentioned that before, and that is going to be the big downfall of Sab Gaming, as McKellar really is gaining only 2 laps difference in the age of their tyres, but McKellar evidently just with the pace. He dominated the sprint race after starting in 8th position. He has led most of this feature race here, and he is looking to retake the lead that he really should have never lost. To turn 1 we go then. There isn't much of a gap, but the double DRS is going to aid him in trying to get past. We are on board with McKellar, the winner of the sprint, looking to become the winner of the feature race. To turn 2, not enough of a gap for him, but Sab really is struggling.
Now, if in your here we go. I'll wait to ask you the question I had in mind. Up towards turn 4, he can't get the move done. So personally, Jack, I want to know, if you're in Sab's position, you realise that the win, unless a miracle happens, isn't going to come. If I'm in his position, I'm just saying, you know, whatever, get on with it. But if you're in Sab's position, what are you doing at this stage?
I think, honestly, I'm letting McKellar through, and I'm just going to try and stick with him to drag me along with the DRS. Obviously, Dan is not in DRS of anyone. CJ is right behind him, though. But if I'm in Sab's position, I'm letting McKellar go. I'm staying in his DRS, and I'm just going to try and drag myself away from the rest of the field to try and limit that damage with the penalty. Currently, he would be finishing in, I believe, 4th. So, not a bad position, But obviously, currently leading the race and defending well, he would have hoped for more as we now go down the final straight again with McKellar. Surely this time he will be close enough. To turn one we go. To the outside he
Yeah, he let
goes.
him through.
Sab lets him past. McKellar retakes the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. On lap 16 of 19, the feature race is led once more by the Van Amersfoort car of McKellar.
Now that is very interesting. I personally, if I was in his position, I'm not sure I would have quite done that, as that did lose him a little bit of time. He managed to gain it back, so clearly he's got a plan in mind for what he wants to do. Is he going to try and stick with McKellar, as you said? That seems like the logical thing to do, but it's difficult to say because with that amount of penalties, what can you really do in that position? As we have a yellow, and that is CJ losing quite a heap of time, and he's dropped off massively, and he actually cuts the corner, and he's retired. So now for Sab, that is huge, as that puts him, I believe, staying on the podium.
I do believe so, as obviously McKellar is beating him. Dan Lovett would overtake him. The question is, will Anarchy be able to do enough to try and gain on him? Sab is still, or just actually falls out of the DRS of McKellar. He made a little mistake there, but Sab, is he going to be able to try and break that duct and hopefully, for his sake, not pick up any more penalties to keep himself on the podium? Up and down the grid, we've got BT, who obviously moves up past CJ and up into 9th. That's probably where he will finish, running quite a lonely race now in 9th. Meldrum is in 8th with a Raise and Psycho in 6th and 7th. It's a road in 5-6 as Sheldon on the hard tyres is running in 5th. Anarchy obviously in 4th. But incredible action, and I must say, for my first ever F2 commentary, this has been brilliant stuff.
It's just been constant action, fantastic stuff from qualifying to the sprint and now the feature. Fantastic stuff to see, but it's not over yet, as we have Sab still just slightly within and now out of that DRS range. Dan not really putting pressure on him, but he doesn't really need to because he's well within that range, so he can just coast home for the final 2 laps, which is really an ideal position to be in.
Exactly that. Dan really doesn't have to do anything. He's just got to keep the car on track, not pick up any penalties himself, and he'll be inheriting a P2, which will be absolutely brilliant for Dan Lovett, which will make it an incredible result for him. Sab obviously is his teammate in the Invicta car, so he won't be happy that that is going to be quite a big penalty for Sab at the end of the Grand Prix. But as a team, they still will score some mega points.
Absolutely. And I mean, for what it's worth, Sab just cost himself a little bit of time there. 6/10 lost, and Dan gains a little bit, and this will make that gap to Anarchy interesting. I think he will slightly just about keep it, but certainly something to keep an eye on. As Anarchy, I'm not sure if he'll know how much he's going to have to catch up, but I'm sure he will rue the day that he doesn't if he can't get through him. But for Sab, this is unraveling.
Meldrum is looking for a move here on Psycho. Psycho has massive damage. He's lost both end plates. So fair play to him for being so high up the grid for now. But Meldrum is looking to try and make a move past. And as Psycho goes wide, this is going to be Meldrum's opportunity for the cutback. Up the hill towards turn 4. Does he have enough pace? He doesn't. He's going to have to stick behind Psycho for the time being. But Psycho with a great drive with all that damage.
Absolutely. As we head towards the final lap here, obviously pretty much in the bag as long as McKellar doesn't throw this away. But given the consistency we've seen, it certainly doesn't look that way. And it has been fantastic from him all evening. I think in the brief time that we've seen of him, this has been a fantastic beginning for him.
Completely agreed. He's not had the luck in the F1 tiers, but we came to F2 today. We took to the Hungaroring and he has absolutely dominated. He may not have had the 1 lap pace. We knew it was a one-shot quali. It's a lot of pressure on the drivers. He started 8th for the sprint race, and he carved his way through the field and managed to win that in dominant fashion. And in the feature race now, he has done exactly the same thing. He took the lead and he never looked back. Michele, with an incredible drive throughout the whole night tonight, he is going to take home maximum points from Hungary and start an early championship fight. It is the first time that NRRL has ever raced in Formula 2 cars. And well, if you are thinking about joining this tier, you know who to keep your eyes on now. The stamp of authority has been laid and Michele has risen to the top. He won the sprint race about 20 minutes ago. Well, he now wins the feature. It is back to back for Michele. An incredible drive from the Van Amersfoort driver. He takes both wins in Hungary. Dan Lovett will finish in second after his teammate Sab's penalties, who just did enough to keep himself on the podium. Anarchy will bring it home in 4th place, one of the only drivers without a penalty. Sheldon will come home in 5th, being one of the only cars on the alternate strategy. Arrays, his teammate for Rodin, 5th and 6th. Arrays coming home in 6th place. It will be Psycho who finishes in 7th, although Meldrum will take that position with the penalties. BT will finish in 8th, with Josh finishing in 9th after that contact, after being right up at the front. That contact at turn 1 really took him out of it after he went bowling. Ryan Brooks, we saw him spin right at the start before we even got off the grid, and he had a couple more spins in there, but he comes home for 11th place. Paul Codd will finish in 12th, with Bruiser in 13th and CJ failing to reach the flag. But for Michele, a dream weekend here in Hungary. He dominates round 1, winning both the sprint and the feature, starting an early championship lead.
You're not going to get many better days than that if you are Michele. And as I've said a few times, just an absolutely dominant display. I can't say I expected to see that out of him. Very much, you could say, a diamond in the dark. You know, no one expected to see him. I didn't expect to see the same winner in both races. But fantastic from 8th on the grid to take the victory in the sprint, to then 3rd and get the victory again in the feature.
Incredible stuff in F2, and there is your confirmation. Michele wins, with CJ taking the fastest lap. The game's driver of the day goes to Sheldon, most overtakes being BT, and the cleanest driver being Dan Lovett. And there is your grid then, as we take a look at the standings. Michele with 35 points will be leading the championship. Sab and Dan, the two teammates, on level pegging, with Arrays and Anarchy in 4th and 5th. Sheldon is in 6th, with BT and Josh taking up 7th and 8th. Meldrum in 9th, with Psycho and CJ in 10th and 11th, with Ryan Brooks, Paul Codd and Bruiser failing to score in the first round. Lewis, I will come to you quickly before we end. Who was your driver of the day?
I think you have to go straight. It's an easy choice, but it has to be Michele. That incredible consistency to not pick up a penalty in either of the races when it's so easy to do it, and doesn't even really make you look like any worse of a driver. To not pick one up and dominate the races with some incredible overtakes, by far it has to be him for me.
Completely agreed. Well, thank you for joining me on the commentary, Lewis. My name has been Jack. It is always a pleasure. We will be back tomorrow for the 100% tier. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Incredible action up and down the grid. If you're interested in the F2, we'll be back next week for round 2. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow for the 100% tier. Take care.